All right, so this is the Matrix Resurrections spoiler review. We're going to go into the things I liked and did not like about this film in this review. I got to see the movie for a second time on HBO Max yesterday, so I can actually give different and deeper thoughts on the film compared to my first viewing. Now, it was interesting because I went into this movie at the critic screenings already knowing what was going to happen because, as you know, and I am going to tell you again, I did reveal the plot earlier this year before the trailer even came out. Even by knowing it, I was watching the movie still wanting to kind of discover what was going to happen, how it was going to play out, and if anything had changed. And there were a couple of things that were different in the movie than were in the spoilers, something that I wasn't expecting, which I'll get into shortly here. So, after seeing the movie a second time, I understand the movie a lot more. I actually really understand this film more the second time viewing it. But I've noticed it's getting kind of polarizing viewpoints because there are things in this movie that are great and there are things that are pretty damn bad. I think it all comes down to how you feel about meta storytelling and sort of the movie poking fun at itself. Some say that the movie made fun of itself and the industry itself, Hollywood, a bit too much. I thought it was actually pretty damn effective at it. It's very hard to do a movie like this that's meta like quite like this. You know, I think a lot of Kevin Smith movies do it. The most notorious comparison was Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now, if you notice, the Nightmare on Elm Street series does have something in common with The Matrix, so it does kind of work. The Nightmare on Elm Street series is about Fred Krueger coming at you in your dreams. The Matrix films is about a dream world. So these two franchises with the whole dream aspect and you being unsure of what's real and what's not, both of them kind of can be effective as far as fucking with the audience. That's what the first Matrix did in a good way. This movie does it too, but the problem is that it's following up the original Matrix. And the issue is that, and I've talked about this even before I saw the movie, it's Neo kind of retracing his steps again. A lot of the film is him discovering himself again. And I'm going to go into in detail here some points that I liked and did not like. Okay, so I did like the meta nature of it. I thought it was pretty brilliant that they wove it into the plot, how the machines basically tricked Neo into thinking there was no Matrix by telling him he created the Matrix as a fictional video game. That's pretty damn smart. That's actually a pretty smart way of looking at things. So I did like that aspect. I was a little bit confused about why they recast some of the characters, but Morpheus actually died in the Matrix online game. So recasting him made sense while still having him be in the film. Now, what I will say, before I get to the Morpheus thing, is Yahya Abdul-Mateen II did a great job. He did a great job. Now, the opening prologue of the film is Bugs trying to unlock Morpheus's brain. Some say it's a bit unnecessary, but I do understand why they did it. I do get it. It sort of reestablishes that mystery aspect. The second time that I watched the movie is when I realized that it was Neo who was doing a lot of things subconsciously to push the narrative, and I actually thought that was pretty smart. There were things that I noticed the second time watching the film that really saved the movie. The first time, it didn't work for me. The second time, as far as the plot goes, and as far as like the fact that now we're living in a world after revolutions where there was a machine civil war. Like, I want to know more about that. They go to Niobe and, you know, she tells them about this machine civil war. That was the most interesting thing, that the machines built like a city outside the Matrix, or that is, they helped the humans build the city, and like you can tell that things changed, technology evolved. You now have programs that can exist in the real world with, like what Morpheus did. He can exist outside the Matrix, things like that. You know, the Morpheus in the story. And so it really, the issue is that the movie talks a lot. And the problem with that is same thing with the architect scene in Reloaded. When the architect scene happened, I didn't quite fully understand it. A lot of people didn't. In this movie, when the analyst reveals what was going on, it makes sense. And the whole thing is that Neo and Trinity have a connection that is so strong that together they disrupt the balance of the Matrix and thus cause a problem with the anomaly. So what he chose to do is go in and keep them close to each other but wipe their memories so they wouldn't remember who they were, and thus keep balance in the Matrix and not cause the anomaly to happen. Because remember, in the previous trilogy, we find out from the architect that he's been trying to fix the anomaly, the systemic anomaly, which was Neo. Neo was the sixth anomaly, with the sixth version of the Matrix, and he was unable to do it. But the analysts figured out how to do it. The Matrix ends up getting destabilized, and now the issue is that the machines are about to reboot the Matrix again, but the analyst stops them, saying that that Neo's coming back because he wants Trinity to be saved. And that, of course, leads to the big finale in the coffee shop. You know, it makes a lot more sense the second time you watch it. So I'm going to give them credit for that. I felt like the movie was lacking in martial arts action. I wanted a bit more of that. I thought the Neo versus Smith fight was underwhelming to me in the middle of the movie. I thought the movie, unless you are a Matrix fan, you probably won't appreciate it. You should just watch the first one, because you really have to be into this kind of stuff to really understand. You know, and I am into it. So if you're not, it's just not going to make sense to you. You're not going to care. You know, the issue with Sati. Okay, this is a criticism of the film. When my source, first saw the movie, it was a different cut than this one slightly, because Sati was not in the version that he saw. Now, either he doesn't remember or she really wasn't in it, because I felt like that convoluted thing they had to do with Bugs, how she had to like take over Trinity's jacking and all that, it was so confusing and convoluted. And the second time it made a little bit more sense to me, but it was still completely pointless. Like, it shouldn't have been that difficult. I understand why they did that, but it was just too much exposition, and you're going to bore the audience. And it had the same problem that Reloaded kind of had, and Revolutions. It really had that problem where it was too much talking. And whereas I think the first Matrix film balanced the exposition with the action better than any of these movies, this one, not enough action, way not enough action, tons of exposition, because they had to also explain the 60-year difference and what happened. So to me, that was a problem. The second time around, like I said, it was easier to swallow, but no movie should really require multiple viewings, but some movies do kind of need multiple viewings for us to really understand them. You know, there's tons of classic movies like this, and there's some movies like, for example, Pulp Fiction, my favorite movie of all time, that you can watch multiple times, and, you know, it gets better and better every time you watch it. So, the whole thing with extracting Trinity, that whole journey was really, really convoluted and confusing, I could tell. And then by the end, when they actually, the big twist that they had already got her out, that they had actually, it was non-linear order. We're seeing them rescue Trinity as they're in the coffee shop, but that had already happened already. You know what I mean? They were already out of the Matrix, and that was pretty cool. That led to the big final chase. And the big final chase with the motorcycle, underwhelming. Very, very underwhelming. It wasn't the worst action scene ever. It was like, it was kind of cool how the analysts set up that what do you call it? What was that thing called? The swarm mode, and everybody swarmed. They all became like zombies. It became like a Walking Dead thing. Like, they were all like zombies, right? And Trinity and Neo had to escape, and you know, he was blocking the bullets, and like it was okay. It was a decent action scene, but it just wasn't, to me, fitting of the finale. Like, I feel like the finale should have been a little bit more epic. I also felt like the motorcycle sequence from Reloaded was much, 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 much better. I thought that the sequence from the first Matrix to rescue Morpheus was way, way, way better. It was just a step down. And I know that Lana Wachowski tried. Like, I'm going to give her credit. She definitely tried. But I just personally felt like it was an underwhelming finish. And they didn't explain how Trinity got the powers of the One. The only thing I can think of is that when Trinity and Neo touched hands in the coffee shop, that some of his code was imprinted onto her. Same thing that happened to Smith in the first Matrix. Remember, Smith got some of Neo's code, and that's what wound up leading to Smith becoming a virus. Same thing here. So that, to me, was, I felt, it made sense second time around a bit more. Jessica Henwick was fine as Bugs, but Jonathan Groff as Smith. So he's a good actor, but he really didn't sound like Smith. After seeing it the second time, like, the way he screams, Mr. Anderson, it did not sound like the way that Hugo Weaving would have done the character. Whereas I felt like Yahya Abdul-Marik did a much, much better Morpheus. Much, much better Morpheus. And actually, it was a combination of Morpheus and Smith, but his version of mimicking Lawrence Fishburne was significantly better than Jonathan Groff. Neil Patrick Harris was great as the analyst. He is smart, and that he's like a step above the Oracle and the Architect. If you remember, the Oracle and the Architect created the first Matrix. This guy's kind of like a step above, and it was kind of weird that Neo and Trinity are like bullying him around the finale, and that was a little weird, but whatever. Keanu Reeves was great, of course. Carrie-Anne Moss was great. Neil Patrick Harris was great. I mean, I can't knock him at all. The music was lacking in comparison to the previous three movies. That was a step down. I felt like, again, I liked the meta stuff. It was only for the first, half of the movie or less than that even. I liked that stuff. I thought that also Jada Pinkett Smith, she seemed to have kind of phoned it in, honestly. Now, again, she can't play like a young Niobe anymore. She's not as old as she played in the movie. They put makeup on her to make her look older. But she, she was like a whatever. She kind of got kind of annoying, if I'm being honest with you. It was annoying seeing her like being grouchy. Something else that did not work for me also was, even though I liked the character of Bugs, her teammates were like nothing. Like, I didn't care about them. I don't even remember their names. Like, in the first movie you had Cypher and Tank and Pac and all these fucking, all these APOC, whatever. You had all these cool characters, Mauser. Like, they all had their little moment when they're eating the goop or whatever. All that stuff is pretty cool. But in this movie, they just didn't work for me. I didn't care about them. I didn't care at all. Also, I was looking forward to seeing Lambert Wilson playing the Merovingian, because I had heard he was like a homeless, angry guy. But he was portrayed like a clown. Like, I guess it was supposed to be for comedy purposes, blaming Neo for him losing everything, even though it really wasn't his fault. If you think about it, it was nowhere close to being Neo's fault. And yet, he was just played up as a goof. Like, I didn't like that scene at all. They could have just taken him out of the movie, and like, it wouldn't have mattered. They could have just removed him instead he got deleted, and it wouldn't have mattered, at all. Like, it was literally a pointless cameo and a callback. And some say this movie has too much, like too many callbacks, and I can kind of see where they're coming from, but I do give Lana Wachowski credit in that she did try to take the direction of the story in a new way. Like, and not as far as the arc goes, but like as far as the world building and the lore goes, But now we're kind of left where we were at in the first Matrix, where Neo and Trinity are both, have god powers basically in the Matrix, and they want to reshape it and all that stuff. But the analyst had this reply where he's like, they're not going to want to leave, and he's right. They're not going to want to leave. Like, people, that was a message to basically how the corporations and the governments have control of people, and they feel safer inside the Matrix than in the real world. And he's right. Like, that's the point that Cypher made in the first film. That they can free some minds, but they're not going to be able to free everybody, because not everybody wants to go. Some want to stay. And that's kind of what the deal that the machines have made. So we're kind of just left in the same spot that we were in, at the end of the first movie and at the end of the third movie. So I don't know if there will be a sequel. Like, I don't know if there really could be at this point. Ultimately, though, while I feel like I now, after seeing it twice, understand what she was going for, and I kind of respect what the filmmakers were going for, and there are some scenes in this movie that I totally love. Like, for example, the scene where Morpheus is training up Neo and convincing her he has to save Trinity by fighting for her. Like, there's some stuff that resonated with me personally based on relationships that I've had that I've trying to save, and things like that I've gone through. It's one of those things where, like, a lot of this movie did resonate with me, like, deeply, right? As far as the pain of losing someone you love and trying to get them back. I got that part. I got it. But, like, at the same time, like, it's a thing where it's just not a very fun movie to watch. And I'll be honest, even Reloaded or Revolutions is more fun to watch. I mean, there are scenes that are interesting. There's things I'm curious about. I want to know more. But it just doesn't... It's not a fun movie to watch, man. It's not one that you really want to go back and revisit more than maybe twice. I mean, I'm going to see it a few more times. I want to see if I can understand it better. But after that, it's just not... It's not like Spider-Man. Spider-Man was fun. Spider-Man was a fun time with great character development. This one kind of didn't have much of that. Neo's character is just the same. He didn't really evolve. he's just going through the same story again without really evolving. So that to me is kind of a weakness in the film. Ultimately, I don't hate it though. Some hate it. You know, at first I thought I was gonna hate it, and I didn't really like it the first time I saw it. Second time I appreciated it more, but I still am not gonna recommend this being like a movie that is like a great movie at all. It's a mid movie. It's a very mid movie to me. And you know, the Matrix franchise, ever since the first one, it's had that Terminator 2 problem where they've been trying to recapture the magic, and you really can't. You know, you really can't. The first one was it was lightning in a bottle. You know what I mean? And it's very difficult to recapture the magic of a classic first film. Anyways, that's gonna do it for me. What did you think about Resurrections? And we'll talk soon.